Hello, ninjas and Naruto runners. My name is TV Skyn, and how about that Akali rework, huh? Now, we are not going to get the lore and the story content behind Akali released for a good little while longer. That stuff usually doesn't get put out until the champion is fully released onto the live servers, so we can't really do a what's the deal with Akali video yet, but what we can do is the same thing that we did back when we took a look on Aatrox, and we can take a look at a comparison between the aesthetics and the visuals of the old Akali compared to her newer iteration. And oh boy, what an iteration it is. So just to be clear, we're not going to be talking about gameplay in this video because this is not really my bag. That's not really what my channel is about, but we're going to be talking about her visuals, her aesthetics, some of the sort of visual shorthand that Riot are using with the new Akali that really wasn't present in the old one. We're going to be talking about where some of those aesthetics came from, and we're going to try and make a little bit of an assessment about whether this is a strict improvement and talk a little bit about what has been lost from the old iteration of the character, because something is always going to be lost in a rework. That's just the nature of the beast. And whether it's going to be like with Aatrox, where a whole lot of people became very, very unsatisfied with the new direction that Aatrox had gone in, or whether it's going to be, you know, largely positively received, that remains to be seen. But I think we can all agree that her ramen eating animation is absolutely freaking adorable. Everyone's going to like that. Nobody's going to dislike that. And if you do dislike that, you're wrong. You're wrong, and you have no taste. Anyway, old Akali. So, the Kinkou Order in League of Legends are very nebulously defined as a group of secret shadow warriors who preserve, air quotes, balance. And in the old conception of Akali, she was sort of the warrior in the group of three. It was Shen, Ken, and Akali were kind of the triumvirate of the current Order of the Kinkou, with Zed acting as their primary antagonist because he's from the Order of Shadows and he betrayed Shen, yada yada yada. Shen represented that like the master, the perfect eye of balance in all things, yada yada yada. And Akali, on the other hand, represented a different vision of balance, one where she draws from both the disciplines of you know, Kinkou balance and from the powers of the Shadow Order. And that was kind of supposed to be her gimmick with that. She had this mix and match of different martial disciplines, that she kind of walked the razor's edge between light and dark. That was kind of supposed to be her thing. And I'll be honest, I never really liked her character design from that perspective, in the sense that old Akali was like, she's a Mortal Kombat character. This real, I mean, she's slightly less busty than a Mortal Kombat character, but nonetheless, this is a Mortal Kombat character. Essentially, like, the character design aesthetic, the sort of the approach to, oh, this is what a ninja looks like kind of thing, essentially is the closest visual reference I can think of is Mortal Kombat and the ninja characters that are present in that particular game. And to me, it never really said anything. Like, she had very little visual cohesion with Shen as a member of the Kinkou Order. She didn't have that much visual cohesion with the general Ionian aesthetic, because back when Akali was first designed, that aesthetic didn't really exist yet when it came to champion designs. And insofar as her character design, there really wasn't that much to kind of express this idea, this balance between adhering to the strict order of the Kinkou and so we're being very strictly, oh, I'm gonna follow all the teachings of Master Shen and, you know, Eye of the Twilight balance, blah blah blah, as compared to that darker, wilder, more dangerous side where she's drawing on shadow techniques and stuff like that. It never really came across with me. There really isn't much, because when you want a character to embody a contrast between two worlds, then you have to give them some kind of a visual manifestation of that, some kind of visual representation of the fact that they're contrasting. Like, the most obvious thing would be to give her two different weapons in her hands that she could use, but that didn't really happen. The other obvious thing would be to give her two different colors that sort of mix and match in her outfit, but no, Akali is just green. She's just a green ninja. And then the third obvious thing would be to mix and match different aesthetics, like to draw from one aesthetic tradition and then mix and match it with the other one to show that there's more than one thing going on inside the character. And again, old Akali, there really isn't anything there to kind of indicate it. She is just a generic ninja lady, and I don't think she was one of the weaker designs in League of Legends. I just think she was one of the most uninteresting designs in League of Legends. Like, it wasn't a bad character design. It's just there wasn't really that much to talk about because it didn't contain that much. Like, to me, it was very unambitious. Like, it didn't really try to do anything visually interesting. It just kind of took a stock archetype character and ran with it. And that was pretty par for the course for League of Legends back in the day. It's a game based on stereotypes and archetypes. She was also... This is her second classic splash art. She was also in her original splash art particularly, she had a lot more side boob going on, which you can kind of see in this render of her old model. She was a relatively sexualized character, and that's fine. I mean, there's definitely a long aesthetic tradition of sexualizing lady ninjas and kunoichi, and sort of incorporating... sort of conflating the idea of a female ninja with the idea of a female prostitute, or indeed entertainers like geisha. And geisha, by the way, are not prostitutes. That's a common misconception that we should not engage in. And that's something that also goes back into the mythology of the ninja that is present in Japanese culture, where certainly female ninja would tend to be more closely associated with the sexual seduction and the sexual arts and stuff like that. So that was kinda in there, but again... to me, it really didn't look intentional. And that's always, to me, been the problem with Akali, is that so much of her old design doesn't seem super intentional. Like, it doesn't really look like the character designer sat down and said, okay, what does this part of her outfit do for her character? What does it communicate about her? What does it tell us about who she is, where she came from, like what kinds of experiences she had, what kind of a person she is? And there really, to me, with old Akali, there isn't anything. Like, she could have any personality. She could be a shy girl. She could be like sort of an angry, violent zealot. She could be good. She could be evil. There's so little visual communication going on here about who this character is, and that's always to me been the weakness of old Akali. So, oh boy. So new Akali then, and yes, I'm sorry, I have to be just a little bit gross for a second and say, hot damn, Oof. That's a quality splash art. Yeah, okay, anyway, that's enough being gross. So new Akali takes a decidedly different approach, taking Akali away from, like, that's the thing with the old Akali. She was very much this sort of traditionalist, martial arts inspired kind of formal wear, essentially. Like, she's wearing this outfit which is clearly, you know, she's got the leg wrappings and the skirt and the belt buckle and, you know, the shoulder things, and it looks like a uniform of some sort. It looks like a kind of formal uniform of some kind of ninja order that is very sort of explicitly tied to something. Although, again, it doesn't really look like the Kinkou order, because the Kinkou order didn't have an aesthetic for a very long time, but it looks like something that's meant to be this, you know, uniform of a ninja order. It looks like this thing that's supposed to be kind of rigid and regimented. And then we get new Akali, and things have changed somewhat. They've taken Akali from a aesthetic that kind of emphasized being a generic ninja who just belongs to some generic ninja order somewhere, blah, 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 to much more of a street fighter. Literally, like, this is like a character who I could see turning up in a game like Street Fighter. But also just, you can see it in the splash art, by the way, in the background, that she's not fighting in some kind of sacred ninja forest using the mystic arts. She's in a back alley where she has just had like a bloody, violent scrap with a bunch of enemies, so she has rather mercilessly killed, and now she's looking for her next victim. This Akali strays much closer to the dark side, and this Akali is much more designed to be urban, to look much more kind of rough and tumble, to look much more like she would be at home in the seedy underbelly of some dark, you know, disturbing ninja city, you know, hanging out on the roof of a brothel looking for evil men in the shadows down below, that kind of thing. That's much more where this character design is coming from, and this is being communicated in a number of ways. The first and most obvious one is the tattoos. Tattoos are, especially when it comes to Japanese culture and Japanese influenced culture, and indeed also Chinese and Korean, tattoos have a tendency to be associated with organized crime. Now, I am not an expert on Yakuza culture or indeed Japanese culture and all the many cultural associations that you have with tattoos and with Yakuza culture in those particular, using that word again, cultures. But what I do know is that it is relatively uncommon for women who are part of the Yakuza to be tattooed. I know I've read some articles about a couple of women who have been part of the Yakuza who have gotten the same tattoos as their male counterparts, specifically as an act of rebellion or as a way to claim power for themselves, but it's relatively unusual. But it's something that does show up in popular culture. Now, Googling female Yakuza or Yakuza woman is not a good idea if you are at work, because what you're gonna get is just like wall-to-wall pinups and sexy softcore porn pictures. It's not, you should not do that, because it's not a good way to find out about this. But this right here is a movie poster for a Japanese film that, as far as I could make out, again, I don't really read Japanese, is specifically about a lady Yakuza assassin. And this is a thing that I have a passing familiarity with sort of Japanese pulp film culture and, anime, manga, and stuff like that. And characters like these are present there as representations of a certain kind of femininity within the Yakuza culture. And this type of aesthetic, more than anything else, seems to me to be where new Akali is drawing a lot of what's going on with her from. First of all, she's showing a lot of skin, and so was old Akali, by the way. She showed a lot of skin, but she showed a lot of skin in a very different way. Her outfit looks, more than anything, kind of like a dress. Like that's kind of what it's patterned after. It has these long flowing things and this long thing that goes down in the front, almost like an evening gown. Old Akali, not so much. She's wearing what's essentially a tight-fitting sports bra, leaving her midriff and her back and her arms completely exposed, and then she's got these big-ass baggy pants that kind of reminds me of a sort of street fashion. Like, it's something that, like, in the cosplay community, or even just in modern street fashion, a lot of what she's wearing right there wouldn't really be out of place in a place like California. And that's a really interesting way to go with it. It makes her a lot more contemporary than the rest of her ninja companions in the League of Legends universe. And if you remember back to when we were talking about old Akali, one of the things that she was lacking was this strong visual contrast to kind of emphasize the idea that she's not 100% dedicated to the Order of the King. Like, she has the darker side to her, the rebellious streak, where she's using forbidden arts from the other side, and she's kind of walking a dangerous edge between, good and evil and so forth. That's on display right here, because the pants that Akali is wearing, and they're a little bit hard to get good screenshot of, they look like they're part of a ninja uniform. Like, they look like the kind of thing that if you were a ninja in a secret order, that's the kind of thing you would be wearing. But everything she's got going on from the waist up, really not so much. That's much more something that looks like the kind of punkish street fashion that a rebellious young woman might put together on her own, to kind of express her own identity. And so we have this contrast. Like, that contrast that I was looking for is right there. And there's also a contrast going on in terms of the use of colors. Now, again, because the color grading on the trailer that I took this from is kind of crappy, and we don't really get much of a look at her outfit in the splash art, it's a little hard to tell. But essentially, from the midriff and down, Akali is very dark in terms of her color schemes. Like, her legs, like the pants are dark, and the thing that she's got tied around her waist, I'm not really sure what it is. It's some kind of wooden thingy or a satchel of some kind where she keeps her stuff. Which, by the way, the thing that she has carried around her waist, that kind of indicates to me that she's a wanderer. Like, that she carries a lot of her stuff around with her because she doesn't have a place to put it, because she doesn't have a home. And that's also something that comes across in the introductory trailer, is that this new Akali is not rooted. She doesn't have a root. She doesn't have a home. She has left the Kinkou order to wander the world on her own, to seek balance in her own way, essentially. And that also, again, makes sense in terms of uprooting her, contrasting her with Shen, who is so, like, Shen, especially after his own visual update. Let's see if we can find a little bit of footage of him here. Because Shen is very regimented. Like, he wears a thing that is clearly like a ninja uniform with the shoulder pauldrons and the armor and all that stuff going on. Shen very much embodies that idea of sort of militarism, almost, of this regimented nature of the Order of the Kinkou. And Akali, because she has this thing of, she's not rooted, she is not part of an order, she's not part of something, she's a wandering free spirit. That's a really interesting way to communicate that. Like, literally give her luggage. because she doesn't have a home, she doesn't have a place to call her own, she is wandering all the time. Anyway, what I was talking about was the colors, but the thing I was bringing up was that everything below her waist has a much darker color than everything above her waist. Above her waist, it's only really her hair that's particularly dark. Even the sort of the greens and the teals of her mask and her sports bra, I don't know exactly, halter top, is that what they're called? I'm really bad at knowing the names of fashion things, are much more brighter. And again, that's that visual contrast that I was looking for, that distinction between one type of colors and another type of colors, embodying this idea that she has a duality within her, that she comes from the Kinkou order, that she's been trained in their martial arts, their discipline, and in their philosophy, but that she has also rejected it to a certain extent and has chosen to follow her own path. And it's just, I have to say, for me at least, New Akali is a way superior design. Like, there's just, in terms of what the design communicates to the player visually about who the character is, it's just way better. Like, it has much more going on. There's much more interpretation that you can make. There's much more sort of tension and dissonance between the various aspects of her character design that give her an interesting personality. Like, you get personality from New Akali just by looking at her. You can see that, okay, there's something going on. Like, there's a personality in there. There's a kind of character who might be interesting to know something about. Whereas old Akali, it's like, it's probably he has a personality, but it doesn't come across very strongly. It doesn't come across very clearly. She's just kind of, I'm a serious Mortal Kombat ninja who kills people, just some stuff, blah, 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 blah. Whereas with old Akali, it's like, you might see her in a bar knocking back a stiff drink after a hard day's murdering. You know, she might go to a strip club for fun. Who knows? Like, there's a rebellious kind of punk-like streak over her that says she's not really tied down by rules. She's not really tied down by expectations, that she follows her own path. All those kinds of, you know, slightly cliche stuff, but that's always been League of Legends' bread and butter, has been found in exploiting cliches and tropes. And I just think it works really well. She's also extremely anime. We should probably mention that at some point. She's extremely anime. Like, just very super anime, just flowing out of every pore. Not just because she's a ninja, but because she has this incredibly stylized hair design going on, which reminds me of nothing so much as actually Yasuo. Yasuo and his sort of very tall top knot has kind of that same thing going on, of this wild, spiky hair that kind of indicates the free spirit of the character underneath. They're kind of doing the same thing there. But besides that, she's also got this very heavy, you know, tuft of hair lying across her head and this little streak running across her face. And this, now I'm kind of reaching a little bit for a conclusion, but to me at least, this kind of hair design, like this kind of using the hair as kind of a cap, as kind of a helmet to kind of hide part of her facial features, along with the fact that she wears a mask, to me that also says that she's someone who's not telling you the whole story. And that can apply both to in terms of whether she is lying to you about who she is, whether she's being, you know, secretive or dishonest about who she is because she's a ninja, but also in terms of not really knowing herself. Like, that's one of the most common visual metaphors for a character not understanding the truth, is to obscure their face and to obscure their eyes. Like, that's, if you remember, like, stuff from Kingdom Hearts, for instance, they had this whole thing where Riku was wearing a blindfold for a long time, and that was an incredibly heavy-handed visual metaphor. But anyway, if you want a character to be metaphorically unaware of something, then give them a visual indication that their sight might be obscured. And that's, I feel like there's a little bit of that going on to kind of indicate the idea that Akali is searching for identity. Like, she's trying to figure out who she is in the grand scheme of things. What does balance mean to her outside of the Kinkou order? I mean, I may be reaching a little bit for that one, but that's something I've seen used as a visual shorthand many times, and I'm wondering if not there's something kind of like that going on. I really hope we get some champion insights on her. Riot will usually release those alongside new reworks and stuff, kind of explaining their thought process on the design and why they went with the things they did, and I'm going to be very interested to read those, and I'm going to be including that, I think, in my What's the Deal with Akali video once her full lore and story is revealed, and we can kind of make some comments on how much of her visual character design actually falls in line with the story that they're trying to tell, which, you know, because there's a non-zero chance that once the story gets revealed, it's completely clashes with everything I've just been saying about, oh, she's trying to be a free spirit, she doesn't have a home, she's more of a street fighter than sort of blah blah blah, all that stuff. If her actual character story doesn't communicate any of this, like doesn't fall in line with any of this, and that might happen because that's kind of the thing that happened with Pike, I'm gonna have a somewhat more negative opinion of the rework as a whole. But for now, I have to say, I'll take New Akali over old Akali. I like this a lot, both because of gross reasons, but also just because it's really fucking cool. Look at this. This is so cool. Oh, one last detail I wanted to talk about. Look at the weapon design on New Akali. She has these very simple but extremely deadly looking blades. She has her kunai, or the dagger, essentially is what it is. And then she has, I think they're called kama. Is that what they're called? Again, I'm not really great on weapon names. That have this very sleek, very efficient, kind of ruthless, very deadly looking design. And again, compare that to old Akali with these bronze things that have like a whole bunch of edges and spikes on them. Don't really make a lot of sense. Like, that looks like it would get caught on stuff if you tried to swing it around. That doesn't really look like a super lethal weapon. It looks like a fancy weapon, but not a particularly lethal one compared to just the sheer deadly efficiency of this thing right here. Whew, that's very good. Anyway, I think that's enough about old versus New Akali. So to summarize, I like New Akali a lot. I like her a lot better than old Akali because I found old Akali really boring. And hopefully, once the full lore and story and stuff gets revealed, we're going to get some confirmations of some of the stuff that I've been speculating. Or else I'm going to have to reassess the design a little bit. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, there's a like button right down below that you can click. And if you are so inclined, you can also click the subscribe button. Both of those things help me out immensely, and it makes it a lot easier to make more videos like this. If you really want to make sure that more videos like this can keep existing, then I do have a Patreon that you can head on over to. And if you have like $1 that you can spare, that you don't need for something, I don't know what you buy with $1. How much is that? A piece of candy? If you can spare a piece of candy a month, then you can. If you want to support my Patreon with that, that's also super helpful. It helps me pay the rent. It helps me buy pieces of candy and also pieces of food, like individual crumbs that I can eat. And like if I have enough individual crumbs, then I can get like a loaf of bread out of them. Like you just pour water on them and multiply. Anyway, that's completely besides the point. I'm a hobo. There's something else I have to say. Oh yes, by the way, there's also a dislike button down below. And if you didn't like this video, I don't know why you're still watching, but if you didn't like this video, you can always click the dislike button down below. That's completely fair, although I am contractually and legally obligated to inform you that the dislike button has a criminal past that he doesn't like to talk about. But if you see him missing like a digit of his little finger, just don't stare at it, don't remark on it. And like, I know he has really cool tattoos, but it's best if you pretend like you're not really seeing them, because he had a rough life. There was some stuff that happened in his past that he's not proud of, but he's trying to leave all of that behind him now and just do an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. And I would like it if we could all just respect his privacy and not bring any of it up and not try to dwell on the past, because this is the future, and he has a bright future ahead of him if he can only let go of the things that once happened to him. Thank you very much for watching.